After going through this video lesson, you are expected to know the proponent of Marxism, understand the Marxist literary approach and some of its relying principles, and critical literary text in the lens of Marxism. You've got to learn a lot in this lesson, but before that, get your pen and paper. Let us check your prior knowledge through a pretest. You can pause this video if you will need more time to read and answer. Press play again once you're done and when you're ready to proceed. Read the following statements and choose the letter of the correct answer. Let us check our answers. You have learned in your previous lesson that the moralist approach in literature aims to judge literary works according to moral rather than the formal principles, merely focusing on ethical teachings and virtue. In today's lesson, you'll discover another literary approach that is also commonly used in literature. Before we proceed, let's play a quick game. I'm sure you are already familiar with the 4 picks 1 word. 4 pictures will be flashed and you just have to arrange the jumbled letters to come up with a word associated with the pictures. Are you ready? Let's start! That was amazing! The set of pictures represents the word inequality. Inequality has been the most pressing issue that people and societies are facing since then. In this lesson, we will be discussing another literary approach that we will use as a lens in critiquing our text later. Let us imagine that this literary approach is a pair of lenses through which you will view the text that you are going to read. Probably, you're wondering why we had a game related to inequality a while ago. It's because we are going to discuss Marxism today. Marxism is a cultural theory that embodies a set of social, economic, and political ideas that its followers believe will enable them to interpret and change their world. Marxist critics are also interested in how the lower or working classes are oppressed in everyday life and in literature. Karl Marx, the proponent of this theory, lived in London at the time of industrialization and traveled extensively through Europe. He saw a highly developed continent where the tensions run high because of social inequality. According to Marx, social inequality was a consequence of the arrival of the division of labor and, moreover, was what had led to the class society. Since literature reflects economics, politics, the kind of people and their society where they live in, one literary piece can be subject to analysis not in its feature elements and devices, but in its contents, style of the writer in developing the plot, and to the extent of his background as a compelling contributing factor to the overall effect of the whole story. In doing a Marxist literary criticism, one must look for the following details: social classes that constitute the setting of the story, characteristics of such social classes, as to how social classes interact each other and conflict between or among social classes, author's idea about the prevailing social issue like oppression, technique of the author in using the social conflicts, Resolving the embedded issue or problem. Author's message on the issue or problem is stated directly through the characters or merely implied. Author's main purpose of writing the story is far from entertaining the readers. Background of the author and his views on economy, politics, and society. And lastly, the place where the literary piece was written. It includes the time, period, culture, traditions, practices, economy, and politics that might have influenced one literary piece. One of the best examples of literary piece injected with Marxism theory is the 1997 movie Titanic. This movie makes the class struggle obvious, which portrays a difference in class and the struggle between them. The ship itself showed the class struggle, showing the first-class passengers on the upper decks and the third-class passengers unable to reach the higher decks. This is good use of positioning as a metaphor for the struggle the proletariat has of reaching the heights of the ruling class. As for the two main characters, Rose and Jack are complete opposites. Rose is a rich young woman who has everything she could want. On the other hand, Jack has nothing. At the beginning of the film, he is trying to gamble his way to America by trying to win third-class tickets in a poker game. The way the different classes are treated by the higher class is obvious in the scenes depicting the sinking of the ship, where the ruling class orders that the third-class passengers are to be locked in the lower decks while the first-class passengers have the chance to get aboard the lifeboats. Now that you already have a picture of Marxism on your mind, let us read a summary of a very interesting one-act play. Let us know first the author of our text for today. Edward Albee is considered as the foremost American playwright of his generation. He introduced himself with a bang in 1959 when his first produced one-act play, The Zoo Story, opened in Berlin. This is about an isolated young man who is desperate to interact with other people. The skyrocketing launch of this play helped propel the blossoming theater movement that became known as Off-Broadway. It's time to read! The Zoo Story by Edward Albee. To check your comprehension, let us read the following statements. Raise your thumbs up if the statement is true, and raise your thumbs down if the statement is false. The characters of Peter and Jerry show a big difference in their social classes through their actions. That's correct. It's a thumbs up because the text provided scenarios wherein Peter becomes uncomfortable and reluctant when Jerry started talking to him. How about the second one? Peter warmly welcomed Jerry's eagerness to establish friendship at the beginning of the story. You're correct. This is a thumbs down because Peter felt disturbed at first when Jerry approached and talked to him. Peter got his ownership on the bench that they were arguing about. That's amazing! This is a thumbs up because Peter initially realizes in the text that Jerry's behavior is absurd and gradually becomes more possessive of the bench. For the fourth one, Edward Albee, the author of the Zoo story, showcased oppression in the text. You got it right! This is also a thumbs up because it was clearly stated in the text that Peter has become possessive of the bench that they are sitting on instead of just sharing it with Jerry. And for the last one, the author's message on the issue was stated directly through the characters of Peter and Jerry. Very good! This is a thumbs up again because the difference in their social status was mentioned at the first part of the text, which has been consistent until the end of the story, that Jerry is far behind Peter. You've done well in our previous activity. Let's have another one. You can pause this video if you will need more time to read and answer. Press play again once you're done and when you're ready to proceed. Make sure to get your pen and paper before you start. Read the following statements and choose the best answer from the given choices. Let us check our answers. You are doing well. Now, let's take a closer look using our Marxist lens. Read the questions in column A and match it with the answers in column B. Let us check our answers. Here's your final task. Read a story Bold as Swift by Guy de Maupassant. Then fill the graphic organizer that follows with appropriate information for a thorough literary criticism using the Marxist lens. But before we proceed, let us know first the author of Bold as Swift. Guy de Maupassant studied law, but in 1869, he volunteered to serve army during the Franco-Prussian period, which he hated later on and spent free time in writing and chasing women. He has a photographic memory and had personal experiences with many kinds of ordinary people like farmers, servants, shopkeepers, and others. It's time to read. Here are the most possible answers. You have learned a lot in today's lesson. To sum up everything that we have discussed today, let us fill the blanks with the appropriate word from the box below. Let us check our answers. Let us check our answers. You have learned from our discussion that the inequality in our society can make a big impact on our lives. Write your realizations after learning from this lesson by completing the statement below. After learning from this lesson, I have realized that get a piece of paper for our post-test. Read the following statements and choose the letter of the correct answer. Let us check our answers.